about 13 or 14, and I was babysitting two boys for some church members. I had done it before, and the kids loved me, and the parents were very comfortable with me. This was a night where they were going to be gone pretty much until 2:30 in the morning. I was doing it for free that day because they were going to do something church-related, and that's just how I rolled. Anyway, the house they lived in was an apartment complex. You know, one of those small ones that had 2 floors and 4 places in each spot. They're on the bottom floor with 2 bedrooms on either side of the apartment, with the kitchen on the left and the living room on the right, with the sliding glass door to a small patio and a public bathroom next to the front door. It was about, I think, 1:30, and I knew they would be getting home soon. The kids were knocked out, obviously after practically begging for 3 bedtime stories, and I had finished my homework, and they didn't have cable. This was before Netflix became an online service, so they had a couple of DVDs and VHS to watch, so I grabbed Land Before Time to make the night go quicker. I was already very tired and had nodded off a couple times. At about 2, I could hear knocking on the front door. Knowing the parents had a key, I did nothing but sit there in the dark with the TV glowing. Being a paranoid person and who watches and reads enough horror, I grabbed the baseball bat that was next to the couch, and what happened next will haunt me forever. I heard a small voice, almost like a young woman's. "Oh dear, that won't help you." My heart stopped, and I realized the patio door didn't have the blind shut. My eyes shift slowly to the door, and I see someone on the patio staring in. I couldn't make anything out other than that they were very short and wide. I screamed and ran into the kids' room. Thankfully, they were still asleep. Sadly, this was before I had a cell phone, and there were no cordless phones. All I did was push the dresser in front of the door and stared out the one window of the room. That's when it became dark, as a shadow loomed on the window. The knocking started again, and the woman's voice called out, "Come on, dearie. I won't hurt you. Please come out." The window was being knocked so hard, I was afraid it would break. When they arrived, they obviously found nothing, but the bushes that hide the patio were obviously cut up and ripped up to get through. I babysat for them once more after that, but after they moved away about 5 months later, I never babysat anyone ever again. And again to this day, I know the woman was long gone, but every time I hear a knock, a chill runs through me. I began babysitting at 13 to earn extra money to spend on horribly embarrassing things, like Fallout Boy CDs. I would almost always work for my dad's clients and get referred by word of mouth. My dad is a lawyer, for anyone wondering. I was babysitting for this one family who had a little girl, 9, and a little boy, 7. The parents seemed okay, if a tad crotchety, giving me a full schedule to follow, and jokingly threatening to beat any boy who might mysteriously show up after they left. It felt cruel for them to accuse me of even knowing a boy, given I basically looked like an overgrown baby with frizzy hair at that age. Almost immediately after the parents leave, the little girl sings in a creepy high-pitched voice, "We're all alone now." "I know," the little boy chimed in. "Let's play rape." Looking back now, I know the kid probably just heard the term on TV, knew the word was shocking, and said it just for a reaction. I totally bought into it at the time, sputtering wide-eyed and changing the subject quickly. These kids were hell for the next hour. I wouldn't let them watch South Park on the TV because their parents did not seem like the type to allow their precious 7 and 9-year-old to watch a show like that. As soon as I said no, the little girl said casually, "Oh, that's fine. We'll just go play PlayStation in the family room. Feel free to watch it out here." I knew exactly where that was headed. I said they could watch any other TV show in the living room while I made them dinner. The parents had left instructions to make them sandwiches. I could handle that. Before I had even got out the bread, I heard a massive crash. It seemed the little girl had broken a glass. Tutting and pissed, but ultimately with no way to punish her, I cleaned it up while these two incredibly weird kids watched with wide eyes. Dumping the broken glass in the trash, I went back to making the sandwiches. I'm a vegetarian, so while the kids had chicken, I'd made myself a simple salad one. Just as I was finishing, the little boy screamed out in what, even from a hyper-vigilant state as an accountable teenage babysitter, sounded like a pantomime of pain. Nonetheless, I ran over to the couch in the living room to check on him. My ankle, he howled, dramatically flopping back into the couch. While I tried to figure out how he had hurt his ankle, the little girl slipped out of the room. Peripherally, I was aware of this, but didn't really pay it any mind. Focused on this little boy pretending to be in pain. He kept saying, "I went to stand, but it hurt too much. I don't know." Over and over until his eyes suddenly flicked to just behind me, where I could see the little girl standing with a protruding smile on her face. He was miraculously healed. Yeah, praise the Lord. At this point, I was just thinking these kids were really, really weird, craved attention a little too much, and probably needed more parental involvement. Whatever. I was 13, and that $60 was only 4 hours away. I set out the sandwiches for the two to eat at the dining table, went to get a soda, and returned. After pouring soda for both of them, I realized that they hadn't even taken a bite of their sandwiches yet. I asked them what they were waiting for. They smiled. "For you to take a bite of yours." I am so glad I had a gut feeling to open the top part of bread of my sandwich, because when I did, I saw glass. Broken glass. Broken glass that I'd put in the trash. I stared in horror at the two little kids staring at me with menacing twin grins. I lost it, shouting, "Are you serious? At the very least, you could have really injured my mouth. What's wrong with you two?" Instead of crying or apologizing, or pretending to be ashamed or confused, these two little fucks began laughing. Not like kids. It was too low. It wasn't that silly, free laugh kids laugh. It was low and threatening. I'll never forget that noise. My immediate reaction was, these kids are too young to be laughing like that. I called my sister, who was 17 at the time, cried about what had happened, and she came and took over for me. We left the house with chills after the parents arrived. I never babysat for those two again. What I can't get past is the level of premeditation that went into sprinkling the broken glass in my sandwich, and the total remorseless way they responded to me getting upset. They were unlike any two kids I've ever met before. This happened a while ago when I was 17. My girlfriend, who was 16 at the time, was asked if we could babysit for my cousins. We obliged when money was involved, obviously. We went to the house at 2 p.m. and everything was alright. It came to around 1 a.m. and we were wondering when they were going to be home, so we tried to message them. However, no reply. We thought to ourselves they must have been too drunk and should be on their way home soon. We were warned prior to babysitting that there had been a few things that occurred in the past, such as people threatening to smash the windows, people attempting to kick the door down and get in, and so on. We thought nothing of it at the time, and just said to ourselves, it won't happen whilst we're here. We were mistaken. Around 1 a.m., I heard a noise outside. I turned to my girlfriend, who was on her phone, asking if she heard it. She said, "No, you're just hearing things," and I brushed it off. About 10 minutes later, I was bombarded with glass. A brickhead flew straight through the window, landing on the sofa next to me. I went outside to see if I could find the person who did it. However, they must have already escaped, or so I thought. A little information about this house. On the left-hand side, there was an alleyway leading into both the back garden of the house and neighboring house. It was pitch black. However, being the brave person I thought I was, I turned on the flashlight on my phone to look down it. As I did, I may have shit myself, as I saw someone in a black hoodie crouched down in there. We stood there, frozen, staring at each other for what felt like an eternity, before he finally threw himself towards me at full speed. I said to myself, "Fuck this shit," and ran into the house, locking the door behind me. When I got back in, the kids were already downstairs wondering what had happened downstairs, and my amazing girlfriend was there to comfort all three, telling them it's nothing, even though they were old enough to probably know what had happened. She started to clean up the mess whilst I was on the phone to the police, fearing that the person was still outside waiting. The police came within minutes and took our information and told us that they would patrol the area and keep an eye on the house until the morning. About an hour later, the police knocked on the door again and gestured me to follow him to his patrol car. When I got to the car, I saw a man sat in the back seat, hands cuffed, and was asked, "Is this the person who smashed the window?" I analyzed the person from head to toe, and he fit the description I gave to the police entirely. The parents finally got home, and were obviously worried for their children's safety. However, the kids were fine, and they thanked us, paid us, and we went on our way home at around 4 a.m. A few days passed, and it turns out it was the mother's crazy ex who had intentions to kill her. However, she was not home, and when he was taken into custody, they found a knife in his pocket. I still get chills when I think about that night. What if I had tried to be brave and fight the guy? I would 100% be dead or seriously injured. When I was around 15, I had started babysitting a family with 3 kids, 2 boys, 1 girl. Their mom knew me as the oldest, was friends with my little brother, and had asked my mom if I could help out just because she had started taking on more shifts, and her husband was doing the same. They lived right next to my high school, and paid well, so I agreed despite not really having that much experience. Pretty quickly I realized that it was going to be difficult. The kids were great, but I was nervous around them. The oldest was fine, just played on his Xbox most of the time, or doing homework, but the 2 youngest were a different story. The middle child, daughter, was completely obsessed with horror movies, and on one or more occasion, I had to hide the knives from her since she wanted to reenact them, and the youngest son tried to set fire to the Christmas tree. I know what kids can be like since I have a lot of younger and older cousins, but these ones drove me insane. I would constantly worry about them hurting themselves or each other. If they played up, I would threaten to call their mom, which normally would work. It was after a few months that I realized if I had mentioned their dad, that's when they would really just behave and do what I had asked. So that's what I started doing. Now, I never really met the dad. I just knew that the guy was really tall and big built, but was always described to me as still being really nice, so I never thought about it. On this occasion, I had said to the youngest boy that I would call his dad if he didn't stop behaving, which resulted in a huge tantrum, so I ended up calling him and explaining. Luckily for me, the dad was getting off work early, so he said that he would get home as soon as he could and apologize for the kid's behavior. When I had explained this, the kid was sobbing and ended up locking himself in his room. That day, the dad got home and they weren't joking when they said he was tall. I'm only 5'3" and was 15. When I saw him having to crouch a little to get through the door because of his size, I remember thinking, oh shit, no wonder the kids won't misbehave when he's here. I said hi and apologized for the work call, which he just brushed off and said that it would need to be done and not to worry. We were both sat on the couch. I can't really remember why, but I think we were talking about days that they needed me for. Now, at this stage, the 2 youngest had went to play outside while I was in with the oldest, as I had just been tidying a little from dinner. I was pretty weirded out because his oldest started to get pretty antsy when I asked to get him to the shop, kept making excuses to his dad, so I just offered to go. I could see the dad visibly frustrated. Now, I would like to point out that everything seemed normal at this point, but I remember feeling really intimidated by the dad. I'd only met him this one time, and spoke for no more than 20 minutes. It turns out that the oldest had said to his mom that he didn't want me left alone with his dad, as he had apparently been watching me a little too closely during our short encounter. The parents had asked me to babysit later on in that week, which I had agreed to. However, in the space of a few days, that changed quickly. I got a text from the mom apologizing for the last-minute arrangements, but saying I couldn't babysit. I was a little agitated since I had changed plans, but wasn't too bothered, and just said it was fine, and just let me know when she needs me. She'd asked me to come around to get my pay for the last 2 weeks, and I decided to just nip around before going home. As soon as I was in the house, I could tell something was off, but not wanting to pry. I just went in, said hi, talked about books for a little bit, and left. It wasn't until the next week, I think, or the week after that, where everything kicked off. I came home to my mom being angry and upset, pacing the living room while my stepdad was trying to calm her down. I immediately went to her asking what was wrong, feeling a little worried. Instantly, she just threw her arms around me and started crying and holding me. I had meant to be babysitting, but again, got canceled on, so I was home earlier than what I had originally said. Pulling away confused, I asked her what was wrong. Turns out, my mom had been trying to get a hold of me, but my phone had died. I had went to babysit and nobody was home, so I just decided to head back on the bus, but wasn't able to let my mom know. She sits me down and starts trying to ask me questions about the dad and my time babysitting. Confused, I had mentioned that I had only met him once and only really spoke to him on the phone a handful of times when the kids were acting up. Nodding, my mom starts pressing on and asked if anything else had happened and kept questioning me, saying I could tell her anything. I just looked at her confused and told her that nothing had happened and asked what this was all about. I always remember her taking a deep breath and saying, "Oh, thank God," before letting me know what happened. Now, as I said, the details are vague because this was on the news. Turns out, the guy had killed someone while working and been taken in by the police. During the interrogation, turns out that he admitted to beating his wife, and there were speculations of assaults. There was also mention that one of his types were petite girls that had dark hair, pale, which happened to match my description at the time, and my mom was terrified in case something had happened. I'm turning 23 this year, and it still gives me shivers. I remember feeling like I was going to throw up, and had a sinking feeling in my stomach. My mom held me close, crying because she had worried sick all day, and scared in case something had happened. Needless to say, I stopped babysitting for the family right there and then. I had felt so awful for the wife, as she was honestly one of the nicest women I had ever met. About a week later, I got a text from her. As it turns out, I had left some books, so I had said I would go get them after a phone call. When I saw her, my heart sank. She had obviously not slept and was putting on a brave face for the kids who weren't sure what was going on. We ended up sitting in the kitchen, and I gave her a hug, just trying to comfort her. I had mentioned that if she needed help with the kids, since he was gone, I would try and help, but she immediately refuses, as it turned out people had started attacking the house. She gave me my stuff, paid for the wages with a little more added, and said she appreciated it, but it would be better off if I just took a step back from the family, as she didn't want me getting hurt for being associated with them. To this day, I still think about them, and it still scares me thinking about what could have happened. I still talk to the younger kids who are a lot older, and even help tutor the younger sister. I helped the oldest when he started high school because I noticed the kids bullying him for what his dad had done, which was awful considering it wasn't the fault of the family.